I thought we'd go into our agenda, and I thought I'd break the ice to share a little bit about, again, this is not the sex agenda, it is a sexual health and integrity agenda. So I'm hoping that'll bring some smiles, get you to know that that might be a little shocking with some of the terminology, but needless to say is the outline is we're going to go over an introduction. I'm going to help lay out the foundation, talk about a mixed methods study that we have conducted over the years, and then also go with what do we do next? What are our next steps? And that's why I'll hand the baton over to Dr. Malone to talk about sexual health is sexual integrity, and then talk about the biblical sexual integrity from a different perspective, that more of a biological science, since we are a scientist in this field. And then also the science behind relationship and sex and insights to encourage you for this presentation. So, so let's go ahead and begin. I wanted to just share about, sex, love, kinesiology, sport, oh my, and possibly you're asking why. So I thank you for all that attended, but I also wanted to just start with a quote from a gentleman who is the president of the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. His name is John Stonestreet, and he's speaking on the hookup culture and sexual integrity. And what he says is that it's not that many churches modified their views on sex outside of marriage. It's that they stopped talking about it. Or when they did, many were so focused on apologizing for what they had said or done in the past that they forgot to teach the actual morality part in the present. And so again, this is one person's stance. I'm going to share some other input and data about this and hopefully help you develop your own conclusions, as well as perhaps some experiences that you've worked with over the years with students. So as a professional or field, again, we do promote physical well-being, social overall wellness, and so this happens to influence others as well, and health behaviors. And so with that said, as Christians, we may not want to talk about the topic. However, we don't want to see it or speak about it, but we certainly know it's happening. Hookup culture, sexual activity, even in the Christian schools. And so let's take a closer look at it as the dynamic. And so just to set the tone, I just wanted to help you understand that, again, I was a public school physical educator for many years, absolutely loved it, K through 12. And of course, I'm currently working higher ed. And so perhaps some of these might resonate with you to the why Dr. Malone and I are so passionate about this topic. I don't know if you've ever coached a team and perhaps, one of the athletes said, I need to quit because I need to, step up and be a father to my child. Or perhaps an athlete quit because she's pregnant and she can no longer participate. Or perhaps you're having those struggles or those conversations with your students because they have to go and tell this one instance that they gave their body to another, they have to go share with their family member. They either have an STI, sexually transmitted infection, or they're pregnant and they're devastated because they might be ostracized from the family. These are just some of the examples that I've dealt with, and Dr. Malone has as well, in regards to dealing with different types of consequences, or even just the consequences of just feeling after the fact of how these people feel after certain things. So I'm hoping that we can go ahead and set the stage in regards to why we're passionate about this topic this afternoon. The other thing is just a couple of terms that I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page as we continue to present this material, is looking at what sexual integrity is. And these are two quotes from Protect Your Minds from 2021. And it says, sexual integrity implies having a clear understanding of the purpose of sex to bond two people together, create life, and respecting the power of sex, such as that you would not use it for any other purpose. And that sexual integrity is having sexual health and doing what is ultimately best for us, even when others aren't looking or don't know what we are doing. And so, and then hookup culture is described as a sexual encounter with no strings attached among adolescents and adults. And so just as a reminder, when I teach health, I love teaching. Of course, there's many models of love, but I also feel that we also need to teach biblical love. And so every time I teach health, even despite if it's a public or private Christian university or public school, I do teach the different types of biblical love. And so, so needless to say, those are just some standing points, I think, just as a reminder of where we're going with this. the other thing is, what is the church saying? And so again, I'm going to bring back Stone Street and sharing some of the things that he had quoted in regards to looking at a research study of some of the responses that came from actual church members about sexual activity and casual sex. And so he shared that we are a full generation past the heyday of purity culture. And then he said, in our world, it's those who abstain from sex outside the marriage. And he goes on to say that basically Christians who must justify their strange opinion about sex. And so we almost need to change this culture of, we have to sort of say be apologetic for being abstinent, and especially among our young people today. And so very interesting dynamic. Another interesting thing that happened is, well, what do we do if the church is saying these things and there's concerns? What can we do as professors? And so something interesting is that Don Frieda, a professor at Catholic College, St. Michael's College, she actually created a course on dating and spirituality. And she was concerned that maybe people wouldn't really pay attention, or maybe she'd have to defend the fact of, not to have casual sex. It actually was the opposite. The students that were in that class were disinterested in casual sex on campus, and actually wanted to create a movement to help infiltrate and not infiltrate, but really educate others about the consequences of casual and hookup culture sex. So thought that was rather interesting, because she was thinking she was going to have to create her curriculum on trying to propose that, let's help them not have sex. The other thing is that this is the study that those commentaries came from. And I won't go into detail, but I just wanted to share some interesting insights, is that there was 3,998 participants in this study. And some of them, as you could see in this table right here, they were, some of them were what they titled unaffiliated, which was atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. I have the citations here, so that if you want to unpack this, because we don't have the time, but I wanted to share with you what the church members were saying about sexual activity. And so the US Christians say casual sex between consenting adults is sometimes or always acceptable. And here are some of the basically the percentages of those that believe that to be true or agreed to that. 62% of Catholics, 56% Protestants and historically black traditions, 54% of mainline Protestants say, yeah, it's acceptable. 57% in Christians in the study said sex between unmarried adults who are in a committed relationship is acceptable. And so you can see that the data here showing that we're starting to become more and more okay with this, when biblically that's not what God has called us to do. And so that's where Dr. Malone is going to unpack that in much more detail. I'm here to provide the data. But needless to say is that it says on one of the other items, as always or sometimes acceptable to have sex on a first date. And 12% of those who go to religious services at least a month said that it was okay, compared to 38% who attended less than monthly. So in other words, the people that don't really go to attend church were saying, it's okay. And so thought that was rather interesting. And again, I just wanted to establish the research, the foundation of our research, but as well as talk about some of the models that have come through this. And Dr. Mark Anchel actually developed a disconnected values model that was particularly in physical activity. And he ended up realizing that, the values of one person may have does not indicate has a conflict with the indication of what their actions are. And he realized that goes beyond just physical activity and their routines. It goes on to a lot of other models. And so he actually extended the model to a lot of other psychological aspects. So I'm just trying to help unpack this so that you can see how we started and designed to look at the study. And so back in 2017, we started, well, actually, Dr. Malone started with an interest in regards to interviews and had 21 interviews with women, college-age women, and also others that are currently in their professional field after college graduation. And we found some really interesting patterns that I will share with you momentarily. And then in addition to that, after we unpacked the 21 intense, at least I believe it's an hour and a half interviews, we we went into a larger study of 438 participants on an online study looking at college courses, health courses. And that was with men and women, because now we were interested about what the men had to say as well. And then I'm excited to share with you that we are moving towards a study, currently getting it going to right now, and expanding that to we're collaborating with 3 universities, a historically Black university, a state university, as well as a Christian university. So we'll be able to gather much more data to see what this looks like from college-age students from different university settings. So that's where we're at. And this is what we've done. And so with the qualitative study of 21 participants, we saw some very interesting patterns. And so I wanted to share those patterns with you briefly. And those we're looking at, that those 21 people that really took the time to indulge and actually really surprisingly shared a lot more than we anticipated, had reported that in the past, either a childhood sexual abuse, or they had been raped at some point in their life. And that could have been caused either from the hookup culture or actually previously from some type of incident. Another pattern that we found through just 21 interviews was that there was peer pressure. And it's not what you think, everyone. What happened was, and this is where I think as health professionals, we can really empower our students, but they thought everybody else was doing it. And that was a pattern. There was 21 individual participants and they thought everybody else was doing it. And in fact, because they thought that, that's what made them decide to get involved in hookup culture. And one person out of the 21 actually said, you know what, I do it. I feel empowered when I do it. I don't regret it. But the remaining that had said that they participated in hookup culture actually reported that they did not like the way they felt after. And so with that said, I wanted to share a couple of quotes because I thought it was rather interesting based off of the questions we had asked. It says, the one time that I took part of a hookup culture, I felt horrible the next morning. And just to share with you, these quotes are very pattern behavior. I'm just pulling one, but many of the 21 participants had responded in some form or fashion based off of these. And basically, I felt horrible the next morning. Quote, I did not feel like I was going good enough because the individual didn't talk to me after. However, in reality, it's not that I wasn't good enough. It was that I lost respect for myself and any standard that I had. So the individual had no respect for me either, unquote. And this person basically was saying that, quote, the guys that I hung out in college were mostly fraternity and baseball guys. They weren't the type that wanted to settle down. Sex was considered an action with no strings attached. Hookups were normal and frequent in my friend group. For the girls, most of them were looking for their MRS degree. I'm sure we all know that as Christians in universities. I'm sure they wanted more, but we're also having fun, just as much fun as the guys were, unquote. And then also another pattern was that they often said that it was chivalry. Chivalry came up a lot in the interviews, and women should be pursued and treated like a lady. And I thought that was rather interesting because, like I said, these were some pattern behaviors. Is that, and again, I'm hoping you're seeing that as kinesiologists, health professionals, we work with the athletes, with that mentality of, just let, and even college, all college age students, or even in the public schools, there's ways that we can increase and let them know that not everyone is doing it. And then also, it's not just a not settle down type of attitude. And so just briefly, I wanted to share about the participants from the quantitative data. And just to let you know that there was 438, there was a large majority of women that responded to the survey. Again, these were mostly in health courses. But what was interesting is overall, so excuse me, let me just share this. There's 300 women that responded in the study and 77 men. And out of all of them, 97.48% said they hope to marry one day. So with that said, listen to what the results are. Is that we asked them, do you wish there was more romance and true love in our society? And 85.33%, which was 372 participants, wish there was more romance. They either strongly agreed or agreed. We have, I wish there was more hooking up in our society. And 263 participants, 60%, disagreed or strongly disagreed to have more hooking up in our society. So this sounds okay, this sounds good, but then yet when we look at the previous study, we can see that there's more acceptance of casual sex through the church. So there's some, so here's students that want this, but then yet perhaps maybe there's something we could do as educators and just role modeling. I'm not saying to take more on as kinesiologists or leisure studies, but there's ways to help build healthy relationships through such an important field that we have. And again, I won't go over this, but I wanted to share some of the more details in regards to the hooking up. But I wanted to just share this one right here. I wish there was more chivalry in our society. And 285% participants, 65% said they wish there was more, either strongly agreed or agreed. And so we have hope. And so that's sort of the implications in regards to this, is that we have hope. Like I said, chivalry is not dead. But I wanted to share a couple of open-ended questions. We had one open-ended question, and here are some of their responses. And this sort of relates to the interviews that we had with these ladies earlier. So my generation isn't about relationships anymore. And these again are we had 400 participants, 300 responded, and these are some of the similar quotes we received over and over again. It's sad that many people have effectively given up on married love, exemplified by Jesus Christ. This is a state school, by the way. If more people knew that this was real and people have the capacity to love like this with God's help, then we would be living in a less selfish society, unquote. Relationships today in today's society suck. People who are too worried about what other people think, posting on social media to make it seem like they're in a perfect relationship or hooking up. That's literally all it is now. When I said suck, I want to share with you is that was a word that popped up. There was 2 words that popped up a lot. It sucks. Some people didn't even write anything more than just say, what do you have to say about the relationship climate? They literally would just say, it sucks. Another quote, I wish people would treat others with more respect and be open to falling in love. Here are youngsters. I mean, these are mature responses they're seeing this. And many of them even said, I don't even know where to begin because I feel like I'm giving up. And it was really interesting. And then finally, a quote, there are actually males and females that haven't been with anyone, something that should not be looked down on. And so again, that just really relates to the studies that I was sharing with you prior. Here are real people, real young adults, and I feel like we have a platform. And so all to say is that this right here is just again, reminding you some implications is that chivalry is not dead. They desire committed relationships. And honestly, based off of what Dr. Malone and I are seeing is that they just don't know how that works when they're looking at social media. A lot of them talk about social media and how they think that everything's, they have this image of what goes on, but not behind closed doors. And that really sort of implies the whole, well, I thought you were hooking up. I thought you were hooking up, and they were actually not. They desired better communication. That was a pattern we saw a lot in the results of the 400 participants. They want more effective communication amongst each other. And that was even with friendships as well. And then there is still hope for us, as I shared, to help this generation with our biblical values of sharing love, romance, chivalry. And so I believe we'll provide these PowerPoints for you, but I wanted to pass the baton to Dr. Malone and just share with you that along with him being an author of The Battle of the Sexes and talking about bringing sex IQ, raising our sex IQ up for these young people, he has vast experience in fitness and women's health. He's brought forth deep interest and help with female young ladies transitioning from high school to a healthy college life. And he holds a PhD in health and human performance with a minor in neuropsychology and a specialization in women's fitness, health, and sexual wellness. Dr. Malone taught at Middle Tennessee University for many years and has lectured at Vanderbilt as well as Princeton and other major universities. And the most important thing is he is celebrating this year his 44th wedding anniversary to his beautiful wife, Jody. So with that said, I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Malone. Thank you for your time.
She's a saint. I gotta say my wife, Jody, is a saint. Now, I haven't done this before with this guy's situation. Am I okay with it? You were great. Dan, can you let me know when the time when you stop? As you're working. Thank you, Monica. If you can hear me.
You're welcome.
It's great to be here with y'all. And again, as she said, God brought me to this, not any direct route. It's really circuitous. I started out, I was developing interest in women's health because, especially college women's health, because I discovered the research on the fact that women's health at the time they take care of their babies greatly affects that baby's health over their whole lifetime. In the process, though, of doing my dissertation in particular, I'm doing 32 and then 10 focus groups. What kept coming up over and over was, yes, their health was a huge issue. What they were eating and not eating. Their chance to get out and exercise, like Matt was saying yesterday. Their exercise time was all limited. All of the problems, but a bigger problem I discovered was their relationships or lack thereof. And so that's where, Monica, can you back that up a little bit to the book? Yeah, maybe, there we go. So I ended up co-authoring a book with one of my former students who's a dietitian, and she was actually a sorority woman, had her class in 2007, and sexually active. She's giving me permission to share this. And in the process of us writing the book, it came up that she had HPV back when she was a sexually active college student, and she now, 7 years later, I think it was, she now had to have everything removed except for her ovaries. Fortunately, she had her 2 baby boys, was married and had her 2 baby boys, but it was a object lesson right there as far as how serious this issue is. And again, I think it's really at the heart of what the Bible is about, what Christianity is about, what any society is about. It jumped out at me as this is a core issue. And if this is going by, if we're allowing this to happen and have nothing to say about it, no major steps taken towards it, if we can't win there, we can't win any Christianity. So the book was written not though for Christian audiences. If you ever happen to pick it up, I wrote it for the university campuses that I was teaching on, the secular university in Boy. It's the Wild West out there. That the research that she was citing, I don't know what they say. I was shocked when we did that research. That as much wish and desire for it to be different is there on that kind of campus. Imagine on a Christian campus, again, maybe we have better odds than there. So went into this research about I'd actually been studying this whole issue biochemically for about 10 or so years. But about 5 or 6 years ago, it became very to the front of my mind, kind of backing everything else off. And then Monica and I found out that we got the same calling on our hearts, so we've been put our heads together since then. When I give you a sample here today of what I do, sometimes it's in settings of university settings, and that's all kinds of universities. And then other times it's in churches. I actually just got done teaching a version of this in our church. So, and actually that happened to be to parents of middle schoolers who were going through a companion sex ed course. So the kids were learning and the parents were learning they were learning kind of sexual algebra. I call it the kids, and I was trying to teach sexual calculus to the parents. And what I've done and what God's allowed me to do is really study this whole issue from a deep biochemical level. And whenever I start, so we're going to share some of that with you today. We're not going to get through all of this though because of the time. But what I want to say, so don't forget, is that any of you out there listening are interested in this, having your students or your church, whatever the setting is, learn this. I'm happy to do it for you for free. It's a ministry to me. If I can zoom in, if we have to travel there, it's maybe different. But I want to make that offer right now because, again, I know we're not going to get through all of this. So I went into biochemistry really deeply, and that's what I'm going to try to share with you today. Now, there's people out there that will contest this biochemistry because they are of the opinion that there are no differences, biological differences between males and females. That is crazy. I will tell you that right now. They're significantly different on so many different levels, and especially in the sexual and conceptual. Okay? Now, again, That's a population averages, so not absolutely everyone is gonna display these traits, but in general, large majorities will. So I start out usually with the question of where relationships come from. And generally people don't stop and think, relationships are with us. We are actually kind of just grow up with it. But I get them to start thinking, where's your first relationship come from? They'll think they're friends, this, that, or the other. But I take them back to who was the one that really took care of me to begin with. Oh yeah, my mother. That's the first place that the relationship occurs. And again, there's a biochemical basis to it. God has created us wonderfully and fearfully. And there's a biochemical basis to all of our relationships as they start to develop. That one, of course, you've all heard probably of oxytocin. And oxytocin is very fundamental to everything we as humans do, as well as quite a few others. So that takes place. Our friends basically, that's based on oxytocin as young children. But around puberty time, things start changing. So see, she's changing as I go. So at the start at puberty, we have the start of new relationships, and these relationships include, again, romantic relationships, and those have these other bases too. Then you can back that up just a little bit. Back, so again, you've heard these probably before. Obviously, testosterone, estrogen, dopamine, prolactin, they all work one way, and then there's a shut off, there's a turn on and shut off. So again, all these things, there's a biochemical basis to it, and we behave the way we do in a lot of cases, most cases, because of the biochemistry that we have, as opposed to the opposite sex. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so again, whether people want to hear it or not, sex differences are real, and they're biochemically based. Okay, so that's a danger that I see in our society. All the things that we're, hearing and kind of bearing up under now. I heard the other day, instead of calling somebody a mother, they're calling them birthing people. Come on, let's be real. There is a certain percentage of people, and a tiny percentage, that are transgender, and a lot of other small percentages. But we've got 95% of our population that's one way, and we're trying to act like it's not. So that's an issue that is going to have to be addressed. It's going to have to have the truth applied to it. And the truth starts biblically. Okay, so at puberty, these new hormone levels, especially testosterone in boys, explode. This is something that parents of young kids don't really understand. This last group that I worked with really appreciated this, because they said it explains a lot about their boys. But at puberty, the boys experience about a 30-fold increase in testosterone in 2 years. So they changed personalities completely in a lot of cases. The girls only experience not even a doubling testosterone. So again, boys and girls can play sports together up until this happens. After this happens, if you got a biological male, you're going to have a whole different story. No matter again what they try to sell you, that with treatments and that type of thing, hormone treatments. It's hard for me to sit by and watch what's going on in our society and not, know that we're being liked in many cases. And of course, dramatic changes in behavior and focus are caused by this. Okay, slide over. All right, so again, what I've tried to do, especially in the church setting, is compare what God's wisdom in the Bible says with what I know the scientific reality to be. And the two I was happy to discover. Again, I was on a secular track when I wrote the book and that type of thing. But in writing the book, the discoveries of all the research was that it aligns with God's design. So that's something I think Christians need to beat the drum on that, because we do have the truth, and science does support again, traditional courtship, traditional marriage, traditional family. And again, that was the research that Malone has shared earlier was from a large southeastern secular state university. So for those young people to be saying that in that setting, there's a strong desire there. And again, they're not getting it filled by what's happening right now. Sex hormones, all I've got in life course, can solidify next, sex hormones, especially in youth and young adults. Now, the other thing is the variability is a lot different. Males vary about 50% over a month, and they vary somewhat over that 24 hours. In the morning, testosterone is higher, it's lower in the evening. But God's design of creation, there's a lot of parallelism to it. I talk about, deer season and, the deer running pattern. And I'll ask a class of college students, what happens with the deer in the fall? Well, the males start all crashing into each other, with their antlers and that type of thing. And so what's that all about? Well, the ones that win end up, mating with the one that wins, mating with females. Well, I compare this to, I used to be a college football player, so no offense to anybody that is who was out there. But I think I asked them to think about what happens on a college campus in the fall, out there on the football field. Well, these guys, humans, put on this armor, and then they crash into each other. And I don't know if there's any relationship there to the winning the girl thing, but there's parallel, again, biochemical patterns going on. By the way, the women's their profile, I guess you'd say their biochemical profile again has so much variability. Guys compare change by about 50%, over the year. Women change like by 4,900% over the month. So with a woman that's cycling naturally, she's going to have all kinds of different, roller coaster emotions over the course of that month, and they're actually pretty uniform from month to month. And again, of course, birth control has an effect on that as well that we don't have time to go into. Okay, raise your hand, please, if you're out. Everybody raise your right hand. Take a look at it. Do you have a difference in finger length between your index and your ring? Is the ring longer or the index longer? Or are the ring fingers longer? Okay. That's typical for males because ring finger being longer means that you're in utero, you're affected you're actually exposed to more testosterone than estrogen. If you have the longer index finger, then it means that you have more estrogen exposure. And a lot of women have a longer index finger. I always tell the students that they have that and they're the opposite from male, female. That's one bath of hormones. Again, before birth and just after birth. There's another big bath I remind them of after, a puberty type of situation. So a lot of these things get evened out. But if you do have the longer ring, probably your brain configuration has more of a male brain configuration to it. You have the longer index, then you're going to have more of a female configured brain because the genitals are set in the first trimester of the pregnancy. Generally, always, but usually the matches up and women set up now. Genitals are the first trimester. That's all done chemically. And then the last trimester of the brain is completed. Okay, so almost always those two match, male and male, female and female. Sometimes they don't. About 1 out of 5,000 times they don't. And that's where you have a legitimate transgender situation. So that's how rare that is. Okay, so again, overall, the men have about 7 to 8 times more testosterone than women. Again, that makes a huge difference as far as behavior goes. Men's area, not only that, though, men's area for sexual pursuit in the brain, the medial preoptic hypothalamus is much larger than women's. It's about twice as big as women's is. Okay, now the other thing is when I'm in churches, I ask them to take the time to read Proverbs, chapters 5, 6, and 7. And if you out there and in here, if you take the time to read that, Proverbs 5, 6, and 7, written by Solomon, said to be the wisest woman ever. you're gonna find out, again, inspired by God. You're gonna find out that God, through Solomon, advises a particular sex, particular gender, if you want to call it that, on behavior. And it's all to young men and to young men in their behavior towards women. I asked the audiences that I work with, is there any such comparable type of advice given to women by God in the Bible? I don't think anybody could say there is. So the point I'm making is that our manufacturers' specifications in this area, and and gladly so, he knows us. He knows the way we're made. And he knows who needs to hear this. So when you get a chance, read Proverbs 5, 6, and 7. And I think you'll see what I mean. Okay. Yeah. Is it about?
Yeah.
We go to a lot of brain. I'll close it out in a second. A lot of brain, and again, there's a ton more here that I could share with you, and I think you'll find it interesting. Some people will find it controversial, and that's okay. But again, I've got the science. We've got the science to back it up. So we'll stop and allow any questions that there might be.
You want to go ahead and stop sharing your screen so that you can see the other participants. All right, do we have any questions? Thank you.
I'll start with. So thanks, Monica and Joe, for introducing us, to this, or continue to talk about this from a variety of different perspectives. One thing I was just thinking about from this point in your research, the last 4 years and even decades of, or years of research into what you found leading up to your dissertation and so forth. But is there what do you find in this gray area, perhaps between hookup culture and an abstinence? With your research and lots of questions you're asking, where if biblically, Christians can they fall somewhere in the middle of all of this at all? Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. So it seems like there could be a dichotomy, polarization here, and what happens in all of this gray area of the human experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that we that's a path that's hard to walk, because it's very narrow, because there's been so many young people these days, especially that are already sexual active, including my co-author. And you don't want to give them the message that they're done. Like a young woman, for instance, if you're not a virgin, well, you're never going to be a virgin, and you might as well just live the life that you started. You made your bed, now sleep. So we want them to get the message that no matter where you are, and this is of course a Christian message, that redemption is always available. Again, it's Jesus is the pathway. But at the same time, what we see happening is the church overall, and you can see it in the research that we cited, is having a hard time with this. They're kind of turning a blind eye to it, and it's one of those things where couples these days are trying to decide to live together and maybe still attend church, but yeah, and some of them do. A lot of them don't. A lot of them are going off to college, learning this lifestyle, and then living together when they come back, and they're never coming back to church, which has been a pattern in the past. Young people have always gone away, and a lot of them dropped out of church. And then when they come back, they got married, and their children, they came back to church. And so church attendance is declining because of this. And again, it's a difficult pathway to walk, because the Christian message is a message of love, but at the same time, there's a discipline here, and there's a better way of life to extend to people. So yes.
Dr. Malone, may I add a few things from the research perspective? Is that just to share with you is that some of the people that indulged in their open-ended questions that said, I am a virgin, I am proud, sometimes I feel ostracized, sometimes it's hard, but they hold true, and they wrote such great narrative in regards to their stance and their belief in Christ, many times in Christ. Some just chose, they didn't really indicate, but many of them that did strongly say, I'm okay with being a virgin, or maintaining to be abstinent. They indicated there is Christ involved with that. And so a couple of things to take away from us as leisure studies, kinesiologists, sports studies, when we work with athletes, or when we work with just true, genuine, building relationships is a big deal in our field, either if it's team membership, or if it's in a sports team, or if it's leisure, to learn to have fun together and relax together and build relationships together. And even as kinesiologists, and looking from that perspective of a physical active lifestyle, I think these are opportunities where we can share that there's ways to build relationships, and it's okay. And I think there's a platform too, that, as Dr. Malone shared, that if they did have sex, to really help understand that's not the end all. I almost call it the born again virgin, and indicate the fact that there's an opportunity, and to redeem yourself through God and through yourself, but moreover, to give them. And I think with the results showing that the lack of communication, we as health professionals can really encourage the ladies and the guys to say, not everybody's doing this. Do you know that? And, and then let them think about it, and then let them go ask their buddies. Yeah, no, we didn't really. I wanted you guys to think that, but it didn't really happen. Those open conversations need to happen. I think we need to encourage that, is that's what's the data saying.
I think that is.
We can go up high. We need to start next at 11:30.
Okay.
So we
Yeah, we probably have time for another question.
One other thing, one other comment. This is very strongly health related, because all of these behaviors, as far as, getting married before you have sex, and actually, I'll say that's even to the point of getting married not so late in life, and starting to have children earlier, breastfeeding them, having lots of them, are all very strongly related as far as health outcomes for women. We have an explosion of all kinds of all reproductive cancers with women, and especially breast cancer. Breast cancer became the #1 breast cancer cancer diagnosis in the world in December of 2020. There's another thing that we can look back on 2020. Wasn't great. Breast cancer became the #1 diagnosis worldwide. So there's a lot of things to that, with the things that I just named off. Plus the fact that women don't have as many pregnancies means they have a lot more cycles. And every cycle, the breast, tissue of the breast, and tissue in the uterus changes, which increases the chance of mutations, cancerous mutations. So I'll just say that. Go ahead.
Do you, when you're doing the seminars and churches and stuff like that, you said you separate parents and kids. Do you also separate boys and girls, and have like a specific line for boy inquiry and female inquiry?
The ones I work with, Matthew, are the parents.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the youth ministers are doing. I'll find that out for you and get back to you, but I'm not sure what they're doing.
Well, and my follow-up to that would be, which do you think that is better? Is it better to have a 14-year-old boy and girl sitting next to each other talking about this stuff, or is it better to have boys and girls separated when having these initial discussions, in middle school or whenever?
That's an easy one for me to call. I'm not a youth minister though, but I would call it, yes, I would say I've separated males in one area, females in another, because especially at that age, there's going to be a lot of, either they're not saying what they really think because of the other sex in the room.
Dr. Malone, may I add too, is that I had actually done a preliminary study with high school students looking at physical activity courses that were predominantly female and only male courses. And it was a vast difference in regards to the opportunities to learn more about the health component and the lifetime fitness when it was only females and only males. And also one thing, I wish we had more time, because Joe had done about 3 years worth of a study, actually a study of a college course that we piloted that was fantastic because he was able to talk about, it was a women's only course. We actually opened it up to everybody, but the way we opened it up was we're preparing the athletes that were in high school that are no longer going to be athletes, teaching them how to train to live a healthy lifestyle, to enjoy fitness and health, and not train just to be an athlete. Many times they gain weight, they can't do that, or they don't realize all they did was train to compete. And so it was very, very beneficial because Dr. Malone was able to really talk about sexuality, about menstrual cycles, hormones, and so it was, I can't begin to tell you, that's a whole other presentation. So I think you're getting the answer, Matthew.
Anything else, Jordan? Can I?
Yeah.
So again, because there was so much rich information to share here, and again, we got into about a third what I normally teach, maybe not even that, a fourth what I normally teach. Feel free to contact us. These folks that are here know how to get a hold of us. And again, I would look at it as a ministry as far as zooming in or whatever would work best for you. If you want these issues to be explained and your students to learn as far as again, down to the root level, what's happening here with biochemically based behavior, not only biochemically based, but also anatomically based because of the differences in the anatomy between male and female. Again, that are being really, I don't know, the science is there. I'll share with you the science. You can decide from there. Thank you.
Yes. And may I just quickly add too, is that just to let you know, there was some males in the high school course as well as the college course. And those few males that did take the course actually thanked Dr. Malone and thanked the teacher I was observing, because they said, I feel like I'm going to be a better husband. I feel like I know women now. I understand these concepts. And so that was really powerful. That was an unintended consequence from this. So I thought that was really special. So thank you for your time, everybody. We get geeked out about this because God is good, and he wants us to love and have a great marriage among, again, I can go on. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Well done, you guys.
All right. We will be back at 11:30.